Hey everybody, Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Here I introduce the 2024 Vespa GTV. So once again, it's a return. 2023, we had the absence of the Vespa GTV. It's been the safe journey for several years in the prior generation, and now the latest generation, as we refer to as the HPE2, is now in GTV classic form. For 2024, it's available in two colors. As of right now, mid-August here in California, we can only get this classic matte tan color. It's a pretty stunning color. It also is available in a matte black color to be introduced pretty soon. So the first thing that's changed quite a bit is the wheels. These are the most stylized wheels I've ever seen on a stock GTS or GTV. So the original GTV was introduced in 2006. It was pretty stunning that it came with the 5-spoke chrome wheels on that classic gray color that they had for the GT60. I've done a review of the GT60 in the past. It's a pretty cool scooter for the 60th anniversary of Vespa, and the legend has carried on to 2024 with the latest GTV that we have here. So you have the black wheels, and pretty much it's mimicked on to the rear as well. Moving on to the other side of the fork, if you know subtle details about Vespas, for 2023 they re-engineered the fork on the Vespa GTV. Well, I noticed with this model they have the carryover fork from the 2022 model. So it's just the classic Vespa fork. It's not the double link new style fork that has the brakes and most of the system and suspension system manufactured by Japanese firm Nissan. This has got the regular Hing Tong caliper, uses the same pads that they've been using on the brakes since the mid-2000s. It's got ABS, of course, front and rear. They did add the ASR system to the GTV, so that's a first. So it has the traction control system. They never had it in the prior generations for some reason. I think it may have been how they integrate it with the dashboard or something like that, but now they have it included with this model. Moving up to the biggest noticeable thing about the GTV is the headlight that's mounted to the front fender. Well, I can tell you the bucket has been restyled. It's a little bit larger. It has the innards of the LED headlight that's found on the Vespa GTS. Kind of the upper and lower part are separate, high beam and low beam. The headlight rim is quite a distinct style in the matte black, as well as it carries through the rest of the trim on the scooter, most of the trim in matte black. It's kind of got a taper to it, not the classic kind of curved profile that you see on most fender or headlight trims. So you start it right up, and that's when the headlight comes on. You see the high beam and low beam. And when you do the high beam, both the upper and the lower come on. It's also got a flash function. And right when you turn ignition off, the headlight stays on as well, which is kind of a handy feature. Say you pull up to your garage, don't want to have the motor running, but want to illuminate the area, it stays on. The nice thing about all the LED lights on this whole scooter here, they draw very little power, so they can be left on for about 15-20 minutes without any effect on the battery with the scooter. Moving up on the leg shield, so the sheet metal for the whole entire body is identical to the 2023 Vespa GTS, the Super Tech, the Super Sport, and the Super as well. They did change the horn cover, and it's got these little arrow vents kind of on both sides. Kind of mixed about how they look, but it definitely adds to the style a little bit different than the other 2023 models. This part probably is, you're able to retrofit it to the older ones. But one thing that's very unique to the GTV is I noticed the triple chevron horn grille, it looks closer to what you find on the Primavera Sprint, but it's actually its own design. This is a separate part that will pop out that are painted orange. Of course, you can get creative with them, maybe paint them a different color if you so please. Moving on to the LED running lights and turn signals. Those are standard affair on the 2023 GTS and also this GTV. Nice LED turn signals. And they carry onto the rear as well with similar styling design. A first for the Vespas, all black badges all the way around. So the large Vespa badge, the GTV badge, and the 4-inch Vespa badge on the front, they're all black now. In the past, they've had the Super Sport with the black chrome badge. That's been a very popular badge that we sell on the Scooter West web store. But now they got a solid black badge from the factory. So moving up to the fly screen. It's definitely a unique and different design. You can order this part as an accessory in the various colors, like an orange one or the tan one. So maybe you want to mix it up, add a little bit more orange accent to your scooter. This is available as an accessory part, also in painted orange. It's got the black buttons. Later today, I'm going to see if the prior years of the GTV windshield work. So look out for the next videos, and I'll let you know if those windshields work. They do have a new windshield coming out soon for this, a full-size windshield. That's a factory option, but that's pretty much to be determined when we'll get those in. You never know. Moving up to the handlebars, you got silver levers that kind of look out of place. Of course, we'll take care of that here at Vespa Motorsport and Scooter West. Look out for the next video where I take care of that problem, because I think that's a problem when it's the only part that's silver on the scooter. And you got the round lollipop mirrors. They're a little bit different than the prior generation mirrors. They have 10mm studs. So this is more the same size mirror mounting points or the perches as you find on pretty much most all motorcycles. For years, Vespa's used the 8mm stud for the mirror perches, and they're rather fragile. You go over a real bumpy road, the mirrors will want to come loose, or you drop the scooter, just breaks them right off. 10mm is definitely a little more robust, so it's a happy change that I've seen that they carried onto the GTV as well. The levers it uses are actually the older style levers, and again, I'll have a video for that. Switch gears looks like pretty much the classic GTV switch gears, very similar to what you find on a motorcycle. They're both in matte black, which is nice, unlike the GTS where you only get one option. It's chrome, even on the black trim scooter. The grips are pretty cool as well. They're the new style GTS rib grip with a plastic collar as well, black bar and weights. Besides the subtle restyle of the scooter and kind of morphing it with the new 2023 GTS, the biggest change on the scooter comes to the handlebars and the speedometer. I think they did quite an excellent job by keeping a round shape, but bringing that modern flair with the all digital look to it. And I think it's a really good look. It's not the rectangular TFT all color display that I'm not really that big of a fan of on the Vespas. Yeah, a rectangle screen is great in a car where you want to interface with a radio and other entertainment and have a backup camera, but come on, we're on two-wheelers. You want the essential information. That's more important, along with a nice, pretty neoclassic look. And I think they did an excellent job. The fit and finish is top-notch on this. Like this new plastic cover that houses the whole speedometer is built so much better than the prior models of GTVs. Before, that was always kind of, it looked a little cut rate on the prior generations of the GTV. Ironically, they just used the speedometer from the classic Vespa PX. I mean, yeah, there's some appeal to that they're using the same speedometer that's been around since the mid-80s, but they finally had to update it to bring it along with the information that comes with this scooter. Of course, you got the fuel gauge that you've always had. Finally, they've added a coolant gauge, something a GTV has never had in the past. I like that's multiple colors here. You got military time, 24-hour time that is. You got the central idiot lights, you know, such as low oil pressure, ASR, ABS, immobilizer light. This is the start disable, so it tells you if your kill switch is on. It also even will tell you when your side stand is down. And they now have a factory side stand that has the safety interlock switch as well. So of course you get the essential stuff like the speed, very easy to read. I took this scooter on a little test ride, out in bright sunlight, and I've been out at night. And it's very, very easy to read. Just like the new GTS, and same with a Super and a Super Sport. The full color screen, that sometimes can be a little bit difficult to read on the Super Tech, but I find these new black backlit LCDs are really, really nice and easy to read in all conditions, which is, pretty nice, because in the past, some of the LCD screens have been pretty low contrast and difficult to read in various conditions. And even when you're under direct sunlight, it's kind of got a trans-reflective look, so the light shines into it. And I'll show you one more trick at the end that the speedometer has for various conditions. So moving on to the trip computer. You have a multi-line alphanumeric screen. It gives you messages down here. It kind of works with the keyless system. And if you have the optional Bluetooth module, which I can't really recommend, I'll get into that a little bit later in the video, what my thoughts are on that. So you have two mode switches. I thought that was pretty odd because they almost do the identical function. You have a mode switch down here, mode switch that's easy access with your right thumb, right below the kill switch. So you could just cycle through a couple different functions. So you have the clock. If it says your range right down here, you're going to get your average miles per gallon. And if you're wondering what the economy of this scooter is, my experience is they get anywhere from the very low 50s up to the mid 60s, maybe 70 miles per gallon if you're really easy on it on a flat level road at a reasonable speed. So that's pretty typical mileage that you get out of a 300cc scooter. Along with that, you get your average miles per hour. It's pretty low. It's actually been dropping because the ignition's been on. I think it was about 25 miles per hour earlier today when I looked at it. Max speed was 52 miles an hour that I'd taken on. Of course, it records that, and your battery voltage. But the most important thing that it has is your range, and that's based on just how you're riding overall throughout the trip odometer reset, or the full tank. So it kind of predicts your range. I think that's a pretty handy feature, probably more useful than a fuel gauge, just to know how far you can go. And in my experience with a GTS, you could get sometimes as high as 180 miles on a tank if you're very careful with your riding. But typically you'll always get over 100 miles per tank full. It's only a little bit over a 2-gallon tank. So kind of gives you an idea of what your range if you're going to use the scooter to tour. And if you're looking to reset these trip odometers, you can cycle through them, and you just put it on the trip and you hold the mode button. Another feature that you can do with the mode button is double click it, and it goes between the total miles and you'll get your miles per gallon. There's your trip odometer and trip time. So I did about a 10-mile ride, averaged or did 3 miles, and of course you can derive the average speed, which you can read as well, and your range. So it goes between that. So it's double click or the single clicks to get this one to change the voltage. Settings, you can go into settings by holding the mode button, change your language, your units. It's only got 2 languages in here. Pretty much hold the make to setting, the clock, and last is the units. And to exit out of the menu, just hold the mode button. There we go. So if you're wondering how to reset the trip odometer, we'll get it back to trip time and trip odometer, and you hold the mode button down here. And that resets your trip time, your trip odometer, your average miles per gallon. And of course it takes about a mile of riding before it starts calculating. The trip computer that's built into this to start calculating. So I feel the best setting is to have it where it indicates your clock, the time, your real-time miles per gallon, and your range. That's the most useful setting, but you can change that all pretty much with the single button. Pretty simple control, unlike the GTS that has a joystick. There's a couple more controls with the joystick, the 4-way joystick with the enter in the middle. But once you get the hang of it, pretty simple to change through everything. Of course, if you have the PMP3 that's specific for this model, It does pair with the phone. It gives you a couple more extra functionality things where it will show, I think, text messages. You can change songs. I found that system to be very, very clunky, difficult to pair with both a headset and the phone. So I just really can't recommend it. If you want the Bluetooth integration, I would just suggest buying the Super Sport or the Super Tech. And I think after riding a scooter for a couple hundred miles, you'll realize it's not going to be that much of a deal breaker or anything that's really going to help you all that much, versus just putting your phone on the handlebars with something like an SP Connect mount or a RAM mount. So you have the classic tried and true GTV switchgear, kind of similar to the motorcycle switchgear. It used to be color keyed to the body, but now they have matte black that kind of matches all the other, with the exception of the lever trim on this scooter. You got the start stop run right there. You got your start switch, pull a brake to start the scooter. You got high beam and low beam along with a flash that indicates your high beam right there. You got the standard turn signals. And for the first time, they have indicators for both the left and the right. I haven't seen that on the GTV or most of the other Vespa models. Usually it's just a single indicator that tells you got your turn signals on. And of course you got the basic horn as well. Once you have the scooter running, you can actually use the start switch to turn the ASR system, the traction control system, off. You might find that useful if you're riding on a dirt road, riding with a flat tire, or on a cobblestone road, somewhere where it triggers the traction control system quite a bit, where it's pretty intrusive on your riding. I also find if you turn the traction control system, if you're riding pretty spirited through a very tight road, you're going to get a little bit better performance. Obviously, you're disabling a safety system that might keep you from sliding out, so just keep that in mind if you are going to turn that off. But at least you got the option to turn that system off on the scooter. ABS, you're never going to be able to turn that off. Of course, when I start riding the scooter to ABS, blinking light's going to extinguish, just indicating that it went through the self-check mode. So one last party trick this speedometer does is it has a built-in ambient light sensor. And I'm just going to simulate a sunny day. There's a little light sensor right here. Give it a couple seconds and you'll see the dash gets nice and bright. So if you're riding at night, you have that nice subtle backlighting that's not distracting. But if you're riding in the day, you're going to get that nice bright display. And it's also trans-reflective, so the sun shining into it makes it even brighter when you're looking at it in the bright sunlight. So it still has pretty good contrast when the sun's like beaming right onto it. It looks like it's coated with an anti-glare coating. I never thought I'd talk about the instrument cluster on a GTV so much, but pretty much that summarizes everything it does short of some of the Bluetooth connectivity with an optional accessory. Moving on to the basic buttons that are down below the speedometer. The mode button pretty much is redundant to the left-hand mode button, but it does one extra step where it can reset the trip odometer that I showed earlier. You got the seat pop, so if the ignition's on, you could pop the seat by just pushing that button. And I'll get into the keyless in a little bit. You got the rectangular or square bag hook. You put a grocery bag, any sort of bag, you can hang that right off there. I find it's pretty useful to hang the key fob if you don't want to have it on in your pocket or whatever. And in the glove box, you could push the glove box open when it's in the on position. You have a basic toolkit. They no longer have the little pocket where the toolkit goes in. But the nice thing about that is if you don't have the toolkit in here, you have actually quite a bit of room. They've re-engineered this glove box, and it's actually quite roomy compared to all the prior generations of the GTS. It's a little more useful. You could actually put gloves in there. You could drop a phone. The pocket kind of goes back there. If you're going to shove some big winter gauntlet gloves, they actually would fit in there. I find it pretty useful. Maybe I'll put my wallet in there if I got to pay a toll, or put my phone away. I don't really want to mess with it. Obviously, want to have a phone in a case so it's not bouncing around. There's also a USB jack that they've had for several years on the GTS. Keep your phone charged. It's only powered when the ignition's turned on, so it's not going to drain your battery. So everything works really good. This complete glove box has been completely retooled for 2023. It's actually a carryover part from the GTS. The fit and finish is really nice. It just seems to work better. They kind of put a little more engineering into the tooling, and it kind of shows. The fit and finish is just much better than the prior generations of the GTV. You got the classic floorboard with the 3 strips. You could put an optional floor mat. The 2023 and later uses its own unique floor mat. In the center tunnel, you got a YTX 12 BS, the standard sealed lead acid battery for the main battery. Pretty easy to access. The weight's nice and low, and that's why Vespas handle really good despite having pretty primitive suspension, smaller tires, and a lot of weight or unsprung weight on the engine. But putting all that weight really low on a scooter makes them just handle really, really good, especially on real tight, lower speed situations, like in dense urban situations, or even a tight, windy road. If you know what you're doing, you may be able to show a big heavyweight motorcycle what's up. Moving on to the seat, it's been completely restyled for the 2024 GTV. The seat will fit all the prior models all the way as far back as 2015. That's when they re-engineered the underseat bucket to be a little bit larger, so the seat's pretty much, the pan of the seat's pretty much identical. As for comfort, I can tell you it's much better than the split seat that was found on many generations of the GTV. Those were, to me, pretty uncomfortable seats. You're kind of forced to sit in the front. This seat you can move back a little bit, but you cannot move back as much as you can on the GTS, the Super Sport, the Super Tech, and the Super seat found on all the other models. They're more of just that kind of double seat. This is definitely not appropriate for a passenger, even though it does include black accented passenger foot pegs. Doesn't stop you from buying the GTS seat to make this the ultimate touring scooter for 2-up riding, but definitely not recommended with the factory seat. Definitely looks good. It looks really sporty. There's an optional cover that's color keyed to the body color, and I think you can also get it in orange. It's a plastic snap-on cover, gives it the ultimate fastback look, and I think that was quite clever in adding that accessory. We don't have that accessory as of mid-August, but we'll have it pretty soon. I have them on order. I think if you're never going to ride a passenger on it, I would definitely go for that plastic cover that's color keyed to the bike to give it that pretty awesome fastback look. The grab rail, just a matte black affair, same with all the trim for the taillight. And so on, the badges, like I spoke of earlier, are all black as well. The chrome reflectors, kind of mandated by the Department of Transportation to make this scooter legal for North America. So you got reflectors in 4 corners. But of course, we got little plugs that take care of that. You can buy the orange reflector plugs and the gloss tan reflector plugs, which is, this color is pretty much identical to the tan standard GTS that's available for 2023. It just has the matte clear coat, and that's what gives it kind of that hot rod classic look. Or maybe you have the black one, that's even easier to put the reflector plugs because there's black reflector plugs available. Eliminate those 4 ugly reflectors. Believe me, those reflectors aren't going to save your life on a dark day if you're riding around. So 2 ways to get up on a stand. You got the standard scooter style center stand, or service stand as I like to call it, because it brings the rear tire up. The Vespa's always had a pretty nice stand, pretty easy to use. But equally as awesome is maybe you're backed up to a curb. You have a side stand, kicks right out. Nice and easy to use, and just step right away. So the seat opens and it gives you a generous area to store like a 3/4 and a half helmet. Not quite gonna hold a full-size helmet unless it's a very small one with a small shell. So the easiest way is if the ignition's on, you could push the button on the dash, opens right up. If the scooter's locked up, you have the key fob and you just push that bottom button right there and it will open up the seat. So you could just approach the scooter. You could actually do it from like 10 or 15 feet away, open up that seat. And there's the last way you could do it. A lot of people don't know about it. Say the electro actuator fails and you need to just get into the seat, open up your glove box, and right to the left of the latch for the glove box, there's a manual release lever, and that will open the seat as well. So underneath the seat, you have the pocket for the optional seat cover. You can get an optional rain cover that will cover up the seat. Pretty ideal, obviously, if it's raining or you just want to keep dust off the seat. Maybe it's a really hot day. You can actually buy an optional aftermarket silver cover or red cover that will cover up the seat. It's going to be a lot cooler than having the black seat cover, then it stores right in that pocket right there. So you have the owner's manual, you have the extra key fob. I'll talk about that later because I'll go into the keyless system along with my thoughts about the keyless system. And only found on the SuperTech before was this optional rug. That's included with the GTV model. There's no underseat light. If you know about the SuperTech, it actually has a light that illuminates the underseat bucket. Well, this bucket pulls right out and it reveals many of the inner workings of the motor. I find that Vespas are very easy to service, especially compared to many of the scooters with plastic body covers. Sometimes you spend a lot of time taking the covers off. And if you talk about spending a lot of time, you can have the Royale GP300. That takes a tremendous amount of time to remove and refit those steel panels that come off the scooter. Yeah, it's cool that's got the classic steel panels, but Vespa, I think they just engineered it right from the beginning, engineered it around this power plant, the 300cc power plant. It's actually a 278. Does about 75 miles an hour top speed. I think it will indicate about 80. Plenty fast for this class of scooters, my thought. You have some of the things that you can access, like the diagnostic connector. That's now a standard Euro 5 mandated OBD2 interface. We sell the tools that you can read the codes from it. Something you weren't able to do with older generations of the GTS. So you fill the fuel right here. You can feel a little pressure on the gas cap because they do have an evaporative emission system. Holds a little over 2 gallons. Like I said, it gives you always over 100 miles of range. As many as 150 or 170 miles of range, not quite 200 if you're really trying to stretch it. They just recently improved this design. There's a little drain hole with a hose that goes to the ground, so if you accidentally spill some fuel, it's no longer going to escape and go all over the place, so the dribbles will go right down that little hole. And it just stays a little cleaner. Last thing, you got a pair of hooks for your helmet. Suggest putting a strap around these. If you put the metal D-hooks around here, sometimes there's a little bit too much strain on those. Works fine. Somebody really wants to steal your helmet, they're going to steal it and probably ruin your helmet, but I feel that's quite a good theft deterrent. I've never had a helmet stolen in all the years I've been riding. So the replaceable leg shield trim is all matte black. The idea is if the scooter tips over, the leg shield trim takes the brunt of the damage. Unfortunately, the cowls may be damaged, but there's crash bars that will protect the cowls a little bit further if you have the unfortunate tip over. The first I've ever seen it, they've gone with the matte black belt cover. It's something we've offered at scooterwest.com ever since they introduced this style belt cover in 2020. The way these belt covers are designed, this is a plastic cover that's painted. It has a foam layer in between aluminum actual belt cover that covers the transmission. The reason being is they had to quiet this motor down to meet the latest noise emission standards for Europe. So the motor's a little quieter at speed just because they added that extra belt cover. So on the right side you have the muffler, and that also includes a black cover that matches all the trim on the scooter as well. The rear lights, they're all LED with the exception of the license light. You can watch my video on how to bob the fender and even replace that little license light with the LED. Kind of give it an even sportier look, pretty easy to do. Of course, having a longer fender is probably going to give you a little bit better weather protection. The turn signals, being clear lenses, do have the LED indicators designed to last the life of the scooter. They no longer have any exposed fasteners like the older generations. The taillights, quite cool as well. It looks like kind of a neon tube that runs the perimeter of it, and then the center illuminates when you hit the brakes. So the decal package on the GTV, they kind of have this orange accent that carries through many other aspects of the scooter, whether it's the stitching on the seat, the horn chevrons, and even the wheel decals and the fly screen decals. So that's carried over on both the right and the left side cals. And you see the black badge. That's the 6-inch Vespa badge as well. So I'm somewhere around 5'7", 5 feet 7 inches, and the seat height on these is about 32 inches. I can easily flat foot both sides. So if you're below 5 feet, you may need to have platform shoes or maybe even shade the seat to make it more comfortable to ride. But pretty easy for me to handle. It's about the perfect height. I barely need to bend my knees, flat foot it on both sides. You know, of course, it's not quite as tall as some big motorcycles, and definitely not the shortest ride. A Primavera is only a tiny bit shorter. You got to sometimes go to a different brand of scooter that has a much lower seat height, like a Buddy scooter, if you're quite a bit vertically challenged, unfortunately. But I have plenty of shorter riders that ride GTSs. I think just with some simple accommodations, maybe platform, riding boots, that might be all you need. Messing with the suspension, you can certainly do that, put adjustable shocks, but I would recommend against that. Usually it makes the scooter less stable on the stands and harder to get up on the center stand. But certainly an option. I want everybody to ride, and obviously you got to make it comfortable for you if you're gonna ride the scooter. You ask about performance, I find that these are rather potent for a 278cc scooter. Pretty quick off the line, especially if you turn that traction control system. They pretty much eat up most cars off the line. Not quite 0-60 in 5 seconds, but getting pretty close to that with these new high performance motors. Your top speed's around 75, but I find they're pretty comfortable cruising all day at 65, 70, you know, kind of back roads, perfect for that. But getting on the high speed interstates, probably don't want to be in that left lane. You probably want to stay in the right lane and not max out everything it's got. A little faster than the outgoing 2020 through 2022 model, but not quite as fast as the 2019 model. Those had a slightly higher top speed, but they had a lower performance motor, so they couldn't quite pull that top speed as well as this HPE motor that's found on these newer GTSs. As for the service and maintenance, at 625 miles is when your first service comes about. The cool thing about this dashboard, it does have a little wrench that indicates to tell you that you're due for routine service. And then thereafter, you're supposed to do a service every 6,250 miles. And it's a pretty comprehensive service that they recommend. That includes a valve adjustment and a dry belt and a little bit more. And then at 12,500 miles, you pretty much repeat a little bit more service. You can check out the owner's manual, kind of outlines the whole service intervals on this. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing is the belt interval has been shortened ever since the 2020 model. These are higher performance motors, so they put more wear and tear on the components like the drive belt. But I would say your mileage would vary on a belt. It's really hard when I have a customer ask me how long will a belt last. Well, I don't know how you're riding a bike. If you're on the freeway every day going nearly the top speed of the scooter, that belt, you'll be lucky if it lasts 6,000 miles. If you're a nice, easy rider and you ride it on cool days, you could potentially get 15,000 miles out of the belt. But my suggestion is just stick to the factory service interval, or if you're gonna go on a long trip with a scooter, which many of my customers do some, I wouldn't even say light duty, some heavy duty touring, like cross-country touring on Vespas, such as the Cannonball, just start fresh. Do the complete service and you know you're leaving with fresh tires, fresh dry belt, and you're setting yourself up for success. As for reliability, I haven't really seen too many issues with the 2023. Sometimes I've seen some user errors with the key fob, and I'll get into everything and how this all works. I've covered it in the past. It's pretty much identical to the operation of the key fob on the BV400, the 2023 GTS, and also the new MP3 530 Sport has a key fob as well. So as for the key fob, they include one of these. As of mid-August, it's pretty hard to get a hold of a second key fob, but Piaggio has them in the works to get the US homologated key fob. They have an FCC ID, so they're actually specific for the North American market. The European key fob does not work. So we found out the hard way. We had a lot of these in stock for all the various models, and they weren't the correct model, but we're working on that. Eventually we'll have it. Unfortunately, you're gonna need to take it to a dealer to program this. I know no way around it at this point. You gotta hook it up to the pads, diagnostic tool, the onboard extra key fobs. So you got two buttons on here. The lower one pops your seat when you're within 10-15 feet of the scooter. The second one, if the ignition's off, it will flash the lights on the scooter. So you can hold that and it will do the bike finder function. So the upper button is the bike finder function. So I've kind of mocked this in the past. You're in Italy, there's a sea of Vespas. I can't find my Vespa. There's so many different colors of Vespas, I just don't know which one mine is. So you push that little bike finder and you'll see your wonderful Vespa flashing the lights, letting you know that it's ready for you. But the more important one is the lower button that pops the seat. There's one other function on this key fob. You can lock it out. And this is where user errors come in. So whenever you push the button, you see the green light come on, kind of indicates that's working. There is a small battery in there, a CR2032, I think it is, a coin battery in there. But fortunately, there's also an RFID chip that allows you to use this fob if you either waterlogged it, damaged it, or the battery's dead. So you can hold this upper button and then push this lower button. And now you see that's red. I can't turn the scooter on. So that's a lockout. So, and it's giving you some keys right here. It says take the key closer. The alphanumeric screen kind of walks you through what you're supposed to do with it. So if that's the case, you can still start the scooter if you put it right up to this right here, because it will read the RFID chip. So that's kind of almost mimicking if the battery is dead. So you're still able to start the scooter even if this thing's destroyed and dead. There's a secondary little chip, that's a backup chip, that will allow the scooter to start with the RFID reader that's right here. Also included with the scooter is an extra little token. It looks like a little keychain fob. You can put that on a keychain and go swimming with it. It's completely waterproof, and that's actually an RFID key fob, or key tab. It's not a fob where it's radio frequency, but it works with putting it right up to this left side knee pad where there's that little radio signal. So there's several backups. I know it's a completely electronic system. I can criticize that on its own, but they do have backups on getting into the scooter when needed. So say you have the scooter locked. So the steering locks when you turn your steering all the way to the left. And I'll shut it down. You can push the button again to quickly put it to sleep, and it will say goodbye on the screen. And at this point, I can't turn this or even push it or do anything. It's completely locking the scooter down, and it locks the glove box. Everything's locked down, can't get into it. That's how you secure the bike. And it's the best theft deterrent. It's just locking your scooter with the standard locks. Of course, you can take a little further, put a grip lock or put a chain around the scooter. But generally for most parking situations in public spaces, this is all you need to do. This is all I've ever done. And everywhere, Mexico, bad parts of San Diego, Los Angeles, never had a problem. And obviously the biggest concern is parking far away enough from cars so they don't knock over your scooter. So we're gonna unlock this key fob by pushing this button and pushing the lower button, and it goes into the green mode. So if you're within a couple feet of the scooter, you're able to wake it up. And the way you wake it up is you push the button and it says welcome on the screen. Then you can turn the ignition from the lock position to the off and then to the on, and it boots up, and now it's ready to start. And then vice versa, you just turn the ignition switch all the way to the lock position. And if I walk away from this, it will shut down the scooter, give me one little flash confirmation that it locked the whole scooter down. So that's in a nutshell how this whole system works. In practicality, I've had a new 2023 GTS. I don't know, key's pretty easy to use. I'll just get to that point. Yeah, it's kind of handy to have this. Pretty cool, I guess. But a key's just a little easier to use, easier to duplicate. Obviously, when you get more of these, that might change. But, you know, cars, they've kind of had key fobs for the last 20 years. I kind of wish Vespa took it to the next level. You know, pattern something after what Tesla does, where they have use phone as key. Unfortunately, that requires some really good software engineers, something I don't think Piaggio has at this point. But this is what you get, and it works, and it has a little bit more functionality than you would with just a basic key system. All right, so the $1 million question, what is that? Well, that's the price of the scooter, of course. So it's not quite the most expensive GTS trim. I think the SuperTech takes the most expensive variation of the GTS. But this one does come in about $700 more than the standard GTS at $84.99 is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Of course, as with any new vehicle, you have other added fees that are carryover fees. They're not something the dealer's trying to rip you off on. You're gonna have the freight, a dealer prep that covers the cost for the service team to uncrate, inspect, and prepare the scooter for sale. And of course, all the state mandated fees that vary state to state. There's even states that don't have sales tax, but in California, you're gonna be paying around 7.5% to even as high as 9.5% sales tax on the price of the vehicle, along with the first years of registration and titling the scooter. So if you're wondering what that kind of comes out the door here in California, I think it's right there, right around $10,000. Well, thanks for watching. That was quite a long video talking about everything I can talk about on the new 2024 GTV. Thanks for following me through the whole entire video. Maybe it sparked your interest in your next GTS. Maybe you get a nice brand new GTV. Until next time, Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Look out for the next videos. I'm gonna have some accessorization of this model scooter, and I'll kind of let you know what fits and what doesn't.